Hello everyone, this is Brett Holland and this is my week 2 inspiring research example. The study I'll be discussing is called Cueing and Constraint Interventions for Increasing Launch Angles. This study was published out of Arizona State by a researcher named Gray in 2018. The full text link is below if you want to pull that up. That's also important because it'll be one of the articles I'm actually leading the discussion next week, and this is one of the articles included in that. Right now, baseball is in a revolution, and a lot of this is due to the new technology that's implemented in all the Major League ballparks. So Major League Baseball now has advanced technology in all the ballparks, which provides tons of data, which is all available to the public. It's open source, and that has allowed data and analysts the ability to explore the data observationally. One of these data points is launch angle. Launch angle represents the vertical angle at which the ball leaves a player's bat after being struck. So average launch angle is just calculated by dividing the sum of all the launch angles by all the batted ball events. A ground ball is typically less than 10 degrees. So if you look at the diagram to the right, that is here. A line drive is 10 to 25 degrees, which would be in this region. And then a fly ball and pop-ups are 25 to 50 degrees, and pop-ups are generally greater than 50 degrees. Now, typical batting instruction has been to chop down on the ball, and that has been developed because you think it's sort of like the shortest path of the ball, basically take the bat right to the ball, and that also helps create backspin, which means the ball will go further. Now, because of a lot of this data that's coming available, players are trying to hit the ball in the air more because they're finding out that balls in the air end up having a higher success rate, at least observationally. Now, some of this is due to the shift, which means that teams are now placing more players on one side of the field, which has reduced the success of ground balls, so more ground balls are outs now. And also, players are striking out a lot, meaning there's less runners on base, and so the game has really shifted more to hitting home runs as a way to score your runs. So that has led to the research question for this week, which is pretty much what is the best way to change launch angles in baseball players? So we have internal cueing, which is the way that a lot of coaches would typically use, which is it could be something like moving your body parts, such as like keep your elbow up, or dip your back shoulder to hit the ball in the air, things that where you're altering the individual's body parts or mechanics of the swing. Really, the newer sort of way to cue is goal-directed tasks, meaning external cueing and constraints-led approach. So external cueing would be something like hit the ball out of the infield. It's more goal-oriented where you're focusing on the environment rather than focusing on your body internally. And then there's also what's called a constraints-led approach, which is where you actually have a goal which could be something like a small fence placed around the infield and saying hit the ball over the fence. So there's a target there. So the hypothesis for this experiment was, well, actually there's multiple, but these were the two that I thought were the most important, which were launch angle, bat velocity, and number of fly balls would be significantly greater following training in the constraints-led approach in the external focus groups than for the internal focus group. And also the variability of bat path at the angle at the point of contact would be significantly greater during training for the constraints-led approach in external focus groups than for the internal focus group, reflecting a greater amount of exploration of the perceptual motor space, meaning individuals were trying to figure out more how to achieve the goal through constraints-led approach and an external focus group. So the subjects were 42 experienced male right-handed position players. The authors didn't do a great job of defining their experience or their current playing levels. They just said 42 experienced male right-handed baseball players, which could be anything. I kind of am assuming that it's probably recreational players from Arizona State. And from these 42 experienced male right-handed players, the authors chose 30 with a mean launch angle of 10 and a mean exit velocity of 80, meaning they were hitting the ball hard, but they were hitting mainly ground balls, and thus if they improve their launch angle, they might be able to become better hitters. They split these 30 hitters into 3 groups: an internal focus, an external focus, and a constraints-led approach. So this was sort of the simulated hitting test that the author did pre and post study. So for the hitting test, the instructions were: imagine you're taking batting practice in front of a scout from a professional team. Your goal is to try and make solid contact, hit the ball hard in the air on each swing. The evaluation will continue until you hit 20 balls in the fair play. There's a short break every 20 pitches, and the experimental will tell you when the test is complete. And the velocity of the pitches was 88 miles an hour, and it was indoor in a cage where they have sort of this simulated screen that shows a pitcher, and then the ball comes out and is pitched. So the training consisted of 1 time per week for 6 weeks. The internal focus training was the use of specific cues, such as get your hands on the ball, move your arms at an upward angle, and drive up off your back foot. The external focus was get the bat on the same plane as the incoming pitch, drive the ball over the infield, and contact the bottom half of the ball. The constraints-led approach used a simulated barrier across the field that extended from foul line to foul line, and the distance and the height of the barrier were always such that it required a launch angle of 19 degrees to hit it over. So they had a goal to hit it over this simulated barrier. The results revealed that the launch angle was significantly greater for the constraints-led approach at post-test than for both the internal focus and external focus groups. They also found that the exit velocity was significantly greater for the constraints-led approach at post-test than for the other 2 groups. So basically the players were hitting the ball harder, and they also had better launch angles, meaning they were hitting the ball harder and in the air more. So the study really concluded that it provides evidence that a constraints-led approach is more effective than external cueing alone, most likely due to its additive effects. It's also obviously better than internal focus group. So how is this important to the exercise science community? Using a constraints-led approach may be an effective way to improve performance in athletes. This approach can be applied to a number of sports: golf, tennis, cricket. So some future research questions would include: does improving launch angle result in real, tangible improvements in hitting performance during a season, not just simulations, not just in a batting cage? What confounding factors optimize or limit application of launch angle? So other things such as body weight, ballpark parameters, which would include things like wind, and then alterations in pitch type and velocity. And does improving launch angle result in increases in other negative outcomes? Mainly, we're thinking strikeouts. And that's it for the week.